Categories that we have today of Hindu and Buddhist, for example, perhaps didn't exist in the same sort of way earlier than they do now.
Absolutely. I think those are actually pre-modern categories. I think in antiquity, Buddhists did not see themselves as Buddhists versus Hindus.
Right.
I don't think the two things were seen in sort of against each other, but they were actually all part of this very diverse and rich religious substratum of India at the time. Think about the jungle or the Ghats. Think about the Deccan Plateau up on top, covered with vegetation.
Right.
So think about these caves as an interface between all the sort of more urban, urban, or at least perhaps developed coastal area, and this hinterland that was kind of wild.
Right.
The integration between the architectural, the man-made and the natural-made was really fascinating. And I think to that extent, not only stupas, but the Buddhist cave temples really speak of that seamless integration of man-made and natural, where these monuments are almost as if they are, swayambhu, sort of naturally occurring in nature, and therefore even more powerful. And so I think that environment, placement, were key components of the nature of a monument.
The people of that time had a different relationship with the environment that we do today, because sometimes we feel excluded from the environment.
I think so, definitely. There seems to be a much more of a symbiotic relationship between the people of the time and the environment. And I think caves were powerful places where important transformations happened. If you think about the power of actually transforming the sound, think about meditating in a cave and the echo, and think about the light. Think about this idea of going from light to darkness and to this new environment that is sort of a womb from which you come out and you're a new person in some ways. They also reveal this interest for the exotic, for the other. And it's actually fascinating to see how widespread this interest was at the time.
Because now when we use the word exotic, we sort of assume a cultural center that is Western, owing to perhaps economic growth or whatever other factors. So speaking about an image, for example, that was created in the subcontinent, and speaking about its fetishization of the other, turns the tables around.
Absolutely, and again, I mean, it's really depends from where we look at, and we tend to associate this notion of exotic to again to the east. But when we look at what was happening on the subcontinent, was this Western other that was loaded with all sorts of kind of ideas. So I do think that this popularity of the types can be explained by the circulation of molds that may have been then adopted by different workshops in different parts of the Satavahana world and then replicated.
So what you say about molds is very interesting, because a mold may be created in one area and then it may be used in a different area to create a product that will be circulated in the second area. So then today we speak about cultural appropriation, we speak about borrowing, and it's become a political topic as well. How do you think, and especially based on nationalism, at the time, how would you think people would have looked at these issues?
So my impression is that today we're much more rigid. We label things so much, and by labeling them, we make a clear distinction, we own them. I don't think that in antiquity such a rigidity existed. We have inscriptions, and so we have the work of the epigraphist, and we have a lot of pottery, and we need, therefore, the archaeologist, and we need a specialist to draw and study this material and relate it to other type of material that we find in India at the time. In some cases, you find coins, of course, and so you need the help of a numismatic specialist to kind of evaluate, this material. and to see whether they can help a dating the site.
Right.
You will need someone who's well versed in the Buddhist tradition to be able to pinpoint the connection between these images and the textual sources, if any. So it's really teamwork, and of course an anthropologist will also evaluate the impact and the relationship of the monument with the landscape, and quite a number of specialists are involved in this kind of studies.
Thanks for checking out Art Story with PK. My name is Paritosh, and I created this channel in order to share content with you on the cultural past of India and our world. If you like what you see, please go ahead and share, subscribe, and check out my other social media profiles. And if you have any comments on the content I create, any questions, please go ahead and reach out to me.